So last year I made a video about nostalgic Gen Z video games and I ended up leaving out a good few games. Well, here's the follow-up video. Let's start with Mario Kart Wii. This one brings back memories, especially the wheel for the Wii remote, remember that? It's easily one of the most iconic Mario Kart games and its soundtrack, especially Coconut Mall, is still used today. I would always play as Yoshi because he's always been my favourite character. And my favourite courses were Coconut Mall and Toad's Factory. I love the music on Toad's Factory. Surely I can't be the only person who formed rivalries with certain characters because they were always just there competing with you. Mine were Toad and Peach. Toad was insanely quick, and Peach, she was so jammy. I definitely lost my temper a good few times, put it that way. You see, 6-year-old me couldn't hack anything above 50cc, especially not the harder tracks. Linking back to the word hack, there's also a lot of mods for this game, which has really helped it stand the test of time. I honestly never thought I'd see Elmo running around in Mario Kart, but here it is. But even without the mods, it still holds up today and it's definitely one of the go-to Wii games. Next up, let's talk about the LEGO games. More specifically, LEGO Batman and LEGO Star Wars, because those were the two I played the most as a kid, starting with Batman. This was the first console game I ever played, and it made us fall in love with Batman. Like, 5-year-old me was just obsessed with being Batman. I went through a phase where you'd ask us what I wanted to be when I was older, and I'd say Batman. As you can see, I haven't exactly achieved that, so apologies to 5-year-old me, but it wasn't exactly a viable career path, so I couldn't go for it. But anyways, the game itself was very good for its time, and there was a lot you could do. I remember when I found out that I could play as the villains for the first time, because back then the internet wasn't nearly as big, so you'd figure things out for yourself. That was a fun day playing as Joker and Harley Quinn. Plus, whenever I was out, I'd look around and I'd think of good places to put mini-kits. Maybe that was just a me thing. Speaking of in real life, I always wanted to get some Batman minifigures, but they were just never in my stores at the time. But on Christmas, I ended up getting a Batman, Robin, Joker and Harley Quinn minifigure, and I was over the moon. Like, it was definitely one of my best Christmas presents. The game itself though had that simplistic charm that the old LEGO games had, just like LEGO Star Wars. This one's another classic. There was originally 2 games, one for the prequels and one for the original trilogy, then they put them together and made the complete saga. The first one I got though was the original trilogy on the PC. My favourite levels were the Death Star escape because I liked how you could get the Stormtrooper helmets, I thought that was fun. Plus I like Jedi Destiny as well because I like the fight at the end with Darth Vader. Once I completed the game, I ended up getting the video game, the one for the prequels, but for some reason it didn't work on my PC. I mean, it worked on my grandy's old Windows XP, so it must have been too old for Windows 7. So I eventually got the complete saga and played through the whole game. Growing up, my favourite character was Anakin, so I actually liked the prequels. I know the hardcore Star Wars fans wouldn't have approved of me liking Anakin more than Luke, but oh well, I did. Cheat codes were also a thing back then. And one time I had an absolute field day unlocking invincibility, ×10 score, and every single character. I finally unlocked the ghost characters that I would look at, but I never had enough money to buy on the original trilogy. This game was great, and linking back to what I said earlier about the Batman game, I really like how simplistic and fun the old LEGO games were. The next set of games that come to mind are the Pokémon games, more specifically Pokémon Black because that was my first one. I've played through this game a good few times now, and to be honest, the story's great. I know Gen 5 gets a bad rep, but surely we can all agree that the games were good. Team Plasma's goal to release all Pokemon from the trainers because they believe they're just being used is interesting. Especially when you find out that deep down the leader, Getsus, doesn't really care about Pokemon being free. He just wants to be the only guy who has them. So he's a huge gaslighter who's trying to pull on people's heartstrings for his own selfish needs. If that's not a true leader, then I don't know what is. There was also 156 new Pokemon in this generation. I know, that's a lot. Growing up, the main starter I picked was Tepig, so I developed a love for Embo, even though it's easily the worst out of the 3 firefighting starters. I also liked Excadrill quite a bit, so I spent a lot of time in Springwater Cave running around into swirling dust to try and get a Drillbur. HM slaves were also a thing back then, so you best believe I was catching a P-Dove so I could fly around the map. Who else remembers the daycare glitch? Well, I don't even know if I could call it a glitch really, because all you'd have to do is put your Pokemon in the daycare, Go to the gear station in the boss city, put something heavy on your control pad so you're running around in circles and leave it overnight. You come back the next morning and your Pokemon would have gained loads of levels. These days I'd rather just play the game properly, but young me wanted a quick fix. One time I ended up making it all the way to the Elite Four with just 3 Pokemon. Those were an overleveled Embo, an overleveled Excadrill, and my HM slave Tranquil. I didn't even evolve it into an Unpheasant because you needed 1 Pokemon in your party, so it never went to the daycare. As expected, I got absolutely destroyed by the Elite Four, so I made a new save file and played the game properly. I ended up transferring that team up to Ultra Sun, including the Reshiram. I really enjoyed this game though, and it helped spark my love for Pokemon games. Moving on, another series of games I'm going to talk about are the WWE ones, especially SmackDown vs Raw. When I was younger I definitely watched my fair share of WWE, so these games were a hit with me. The first one I got was SmackDown vs Raw 2008 for the Wii, and it was already a good few years old when I got it. The graphics and controls weren't exactly the best, you'd have to swing the Wii remote, but the game was fun. Not to mention, a lot of the games from the Ruthless Aggression era were a bit crazy to say the least. For example, you could do any match you wanted. You could do Kelly versus The Undertaker and have Kelly slam The Undertaker. Plus there was also a lot of blood. Once we got to 2010 in the PG era, the game started to mellow out a bit, but the gameplay improved massively. I loved Universe mode in 2011, and there was no better feeling than unlocking a new character and having them run down the ramp. Who remembers Allstars? It was less realistic, but the gameplay and animations were great. Who didn't love lighting up gold and slamming your opponent whilst being 20 feet in the air? It was a fun game, and I liked doing all of the Fantasy Warfare matchups because they were just good matchups. It also helped introduce us to wrestlers that were around way before my time, such as Ultimate Warrior, Andre the Giant and more. I remember I loved Eddie Guerrero's entrance as well. I do the dance and everything, it was great. An honourable mention for me is Mortal Kombat vs DC Universe. So basically, I loved Batman when I was younger like I said, and he was on the front of the box so I wanted the game. I got it for Christmas, but I got it took offers after a few months because of how violent it was, and I think that was the most mild Mortal Kombat game. I was only 6 though. All of these games were great, just like the ones I spoke about last year, so feel free to check that video out, and see ya. Do you fancy checking out one of my other videos? Just click here.